utilities. First session was on electric, tonight is water sewer. And those three utilities make us a very unique community. I think I mentioned this last time, but I do know Onondaga County, and I do know that we are the only municipality, village or town, that has three utilities. Most communities use National Grid for their electric. This is our own electric department. Most use Aqua for their water. We have our own water department. And there is something called the Fab Five, and that's the 5 communities that have their own sewer treatment plant, but nobody has 3. So we're really cutting edge here. But anyway, before I start, I just want to introduce and thank a couple people. One is Lori Walter over there in the blue. She's our village clerk administrator. She helps our residents, she helps our employees, she helps me, and we're very lucky to have her. Then in the back, we have one of my favorite trustees, Ed Evans, who just is a very hard-working, active board member, and that makes a huge difference to me and to the community. And then I want to introduce, I talked about those 3 utilities. Well, the person who has to manage those 3 utilities, and the DPW, and the cemetery, anyway, is Tom Pasella, and I am the luckiest mayor in the world to have Tom Pasella as our Director of Municipal Operations.
Hi everyone. Does anybody not know me? Oh, sorry, I gotta go stand in front of the camera. This is gonna be fun. Everybody knows me already. I'm Tom. You all know. Do we have my slide up?
Not yet. Right there.
So I have been here for a little over 4 years. I am the director of municipal operations here. I come from a fairly large utility. I spent a lot of years with Monroe County Environmental Services. We were a sewer utility, so we did collection systems, interceptor systems, 60 some odd pump stations, and 2 very, very large treatment plants. I spent some time at the Water Authority, designing water mains and miscellaneous repairs at their distribution system on Norris Drive. So the bulk of my experience is in water and wastewater, but Cosmo has a lot of experience as well. So we're going to let Cos present on water and sewer, but I want to first recognize my team, or our team. Great young group of operators, take really, really good care of this village. I want to introduce Seth Kiefer, our assistant superintendent. Jim Dries, he's technically by title a line worker, but he is our go-to water everything. Jim knows the system very, very well. He's been there for just a little over 20 years, and invaluable. We need him for electric, we call him for electric. Saturday morning alarms, Jim responds. He's an incredible asset and very dedicated to our community. And then our new guy, Matthew. It was fun talking to Matt when he came in and said he wanted to work for the DPW, and I said, no, you don't. I said, you want to come work for the wastewater group. So he's been here a couple of months now, going on maybe 3. Hopefully he's still having fun. He probably hasn't gotten blessed with sludge just yet, but we'll try harder.
Just a couple drops.
Just a couple drops here and there. I also want to introduce our chairman of our municipal board. Oh, wait, sorry. I digress. I didn't introduce our DPW superintendent, Eric Sell, in the back of the room there. And then our chairman from our municipal board, Kevin, and one of our board members, Lee. Thank you guys both for coming. And with that, I will turn it over to Kaz.
Perfect.
I'll get out of the way of the camera.
Thanks, Tom. So just to go through, we wanted to give everybody an update on sort of the ongoings of what's happening in our water and sewer departments. So just to look at an overview, for those of you who don't quite understand the technical nuances that Tom and I do, I'll take a quick look at the water cycle in Skaneateles, that is what happens to drops of water as they reach our collection system and distribution system, how they get to you, the customer. We'll take a look at our water system and our sewer system as separate entities, progress we've made over the last couple of years, and looking at where we're trying to go. So just a little background, going back to my background, I was a consulting engineer for about 19 years for 2 different consulting companies. I worked all over the state in municipalities of various sizes, all the way from New York City DEP to the Village of Malone, Potsdam, up in the North Country, the town of Yorktown, down in Westchester County. So just a lot of experience in both water, sewer, transportation, as well as any sort of parks project. Folks filing in here. So looking at our team, as Tom already introduced, we're going to focus tonight on the water and sewer side. As Tom already introduced, Seth, Jim, and Matt are our primaries for both water and sewer. We also contract with the Camden Group at our wastewater treatment plant for contract operations of that plant, because it is only Seth and Matt that operate the wastewater treatment plant along with the Camden Group, so some resource needs in that department right now. So looking at what happens to a drop of water in the Village of Skaneateles, right? We all know the lake, it rains on the lake, we hear about the intakes. What we do is we draw water from the lake, we pump it up through our treatment system, or water treatment system, up to our tanks, and then it makes its way back down through the distribution system to our customers. So you can see water treatment plant, distribution system, to you, the customer. That same drop of water then leaves the customer, exits your house, and ends up in our sanitary sewer collection system, which is then treated at our wastewater treatment plant, which is located just on Fennel Street, right behind the DPW building. And we discharge that clean wastewater out to Skaneateles Creek, where it then makes its way back down the creek. So just a quick overview for folks that maybe aren't as technically savvy as Tom and myself. So our water system, most people think, when you think of a water system, you think of the treatment plant, you think of the hydrants that you see on the side of the road. We don't think of what's buried under the ground. And that's all of our pipes, valves, pumps, everything that really makes the system itself function. So this is a map of all of our distribution system utilities. And that's how water gets to our consumers. It's how it gets treated initially, and what we do to make it show up at your tap consistently and reliably every day. In order to do that, we have about 307 isolation valves, 137 fire hydrants, the massive water tank up by the school, as well as the standpipe, which is the smaller tank next to it, technically smaller in height, bigger in volume, next to it, which was installed in the 90s for fire. One thing that's really consistent amongst our utilities on the water and sewer side is the general age of our infrastructure. As you can see, the water treatment plant itself was built sometime around the 40s, early 50s. Same with the storage tank, that was rehabbed in the 80s. And a lot of our distribution system piping is from the 1930s plus. It wasn't too long ago, I think it was 15 or 18 years ago, that you guys actually were doing before my time, we actually pulled a wood water main out of Genesee Street. They were doing a water main replacement project, and there was a wood water main that came out. It's probably 20 years ago. So just some tidbits on what the general age of our water infrastructure is. We currently serve about 1,200 residents, and we are one of the only water treatment facilities that has a filter exemption under the US EPA, which basically means that our water in Skaneateles Lake is so naturally clean that we don't need to have 2 or 3 additional filter steps like you would need from another water source. It's actually a really good benefit for the village residents, because that's less equipment, less operation, less time. It translates to a lower cost of water than what it would be if we were to lose that exemption for any reason. So what have we done? Right, we just talked about a lot of older infrastructure out in the village. So what steps are we taking to move forward? I referenced the water storage tank that was originally built in the 50s and rehabbed in the 80s. We recently had an evaluation done of that water tank and potentially looking at rehabbing that tank again. Structurally, it appears to be in decent condition. However, there are some things that we could use to implement to improve the life of that water storage tank. Exterior coatings, interior coatings, rehab of some of the stairwells and access ways that we could use to get up there. Another big improvement that we've had is in our water treatment plant itself, and that is an upgrade to our SCADA system, which is a supervisory control and data acquisition. It's the computer brain that doesn't replace Jim, but it enhances Jim's ability to operate the plant. That is the way we get all of our alarms. Tank levels, pumps aren't running, something shut down. That's what tells Jim, hey, there's a problem, or hey, everything's good. That technology that we had replaced was aged out, no longer supported by vendors, and it basically, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, if we had lost that computer, it would have been gone completely. So we took the steps to replace that computer with updated technology, updated software, so that our telemetry could talk to both Jim, myself, Tom. When there's an issue in our water system, all three of us get text messages along with Seth. So what do we have left to do, or what are we looking to do moving forward? There are a number of things on this list. If you've driven by our water treatment plant, this is located right behind Valentine's. You can see looks like it was constructed in the 1950s and 60s. It's showing some signs of wear. So we are looking at doing some upgrades to the water treatment plant itself. One of the other things that we're looking at potentially is water main replacements throughout the village. And a lot of these bigger projects, I call these the bigger projects, treatment plant and the water main replacements, we're in the evaluation phase of stepping the progress forward. So we're right now gathering what the condition is so that we can make an assessment of what the cost impacts would be and how we can move those projects forward over a period of time. Some of the shorter term projects that I'll call, the water tank rehab will be a shorter term project. Cathodic protection, which helps protect the pipes from corrosion and exposure, as well as the vacuum pump at the water treatment plant itself. And in replacing the van that Jim uses, everybody sees it riding around the village, and the tool, giving Jim better tools and the tools that he needs to really do his job. So, our hats off to the guys here that make this work, but it's really important for us, forward thinking, to be able to provide consistent, reliable, clean water to our residents, and these are kind of the things that we're looking at implementing in both the near and long term to make sure that we can keep on doing that. So this is just a summary of what our current operating conditions are financially. So from a resident's perspective, our water department operates on a $1.3 million budget. It's just Jim, Seth, and Matt when needed, but most 90% of the time it's Jim. Our usage, you're billed on a monthly basis for usage up to 350 cubic feet is $20.13, and then everything over that is an incremental cost of 0.068 cents per cubic foot. There is a capital project charge that's also on there to pay off some of the previous capital projects that we've done in the water system. And that's generally the layout of where we are, the history that we have, and where we're trying to go moving forward. It looks like there's a lot of work to do. There's always going to be work to do. It's just a matter of sequencing it in a way that's responsible for both the residents and the users. So we are looking at developing a longer-term capital plan, not being 1 or 2 years, something in the 10 to 15-year horizon, with something that gives us a goal to achieve. That's one of the most important steps in maintaining anything, whether it's your house or car or anything like that. It's understanding how long the assets are supposed to work and how old they are, and when you can anticipate needing to replace or repair them. So I'm going to move on to now our sanitary sewer system, which has, similar to our water system, it has 3 components. The collection system, which is the pipes that get everything from your house to the treatment plant, the pump stations out in the collection system, and the wastewater treatment plant. So our wastewater treatment plant treats approximately 500,000 gallons a day right now. We are permitted for 0.85 with 850,000 gallons a day on a rolling average, on a 12-month rolling average. We have 13 linear miles of gravity sewer, which is non-pumped, not pressurized, just downhill water moves. 6 pump stations and about 1.2 miles of force main. Force main being when the pump station turns on, it pressurizes the pipe and forces wastewater up to a higher elevation, where you then hit gravity. Gravity goes downhill. In the utility world, and certainly from the engineering perspective, we love gravity. Gravity is free and it never stops. Pumps will eventually fail. Force mains will become over-pressurized over time or deteriorate over time, and there's a potential for a failure there. The pump stations that we do have don't generally serve large areas. For example, our Ramblewood pump station only serves about 8 homes. The Gale Road pump station only serves about 10. When they go down, it is incumbent on us, and by us I mean Seth and Matt, to make sure that we can get there, pump the wastewater out of the pump station and haul it to the treatment plant manually. So you can imagine that in the middle of a storm or a major event when everything else is going wrong and transportation is an issue, these guys have to be able to get out there, get to those services and bring that back to the wastewater treatment plant. That's just so that we can continue to flush our toilets and use our sinks and cook dinner and everything else without having it be a large issue on our residents. So one of the 3 we did some improvements in these 3 major areas. We just completed a project at our wastewater treatment plant, which was our ammonia and total residual chlorine upgrades. That was as a result of a new permit limit that we would have to meet, which dropped our ammonia limit extremely low. So we had to implement some new technology at our treatment plant. The second one that we finished about a year ago was the pump station evaluation. This was a technical evaluation completed by our consultants to evaluate what the condition of our pump stations were, the likelihood of failure, as well as the ramifications of said failure. And then we completed last year an inflow and infiltration flow study, which is a study that's conducted to determine how much non-wastewater is actually making it into our sewer system. And that would be clean water. So rainwater, things like that may be associated with root connections and things of that nature. We'll talk a little bit more about that later and the results of that later. Right now, we're currently in an asset management program with the DEC through a DEC grant to evaluate all of our wastewater assets on a condition basis, as well as assign the classification or likelihood of failure to those assets as well. That was in partnership with the DEC. They're funding the majority of that for us right now, and we're anticipating that that'll be done in April. So that'll give us another dashboard to use on top of the dashboards that we have. So So when I talk about the ammonia TRC project, these are some of the highlight areas that you would probably never see as a layperson driving by. You would actually have to turn into the DPW building, drive past it, drive through the fence to see what's happening. So at our treatment plant, we have our aeration lagoons, which is basically the third step of treatment through our treatment plant. And essentially these just boost oxygen level so that organic material can settle out to the bottom and we can suck it out and take it away. What we had to install here was, I like to call them bug motels. They're just sheets of a plastic that is put in the bottom of the aeration lagoon. It's aerated constantly. The bugs live on the sheets and they consume the biomass, the organic matter, as it passes by, essentially. And that's how most of the wastewater treatment plant functions. Our treatment plant is a fairly simple plant. It's an RBC plant. So wastewater comes in, we take out all the big stuff, bricks, things like that happen to make their way into the collection system. I know some folks in here have worked at larger utilities, and I've worked with larger utilities. You'd be amazed at what ends up down the end of an 8 or 12 or a 24-inch pipe. So we take that stuff out first, and that's where then the biology really takes in. We settle heavy material, that comes out, we pull that off, goes to the next phase, biology kicks in and starts to consume the microscopic material, and then we hit it with chlorine, and then it's out to the creek. That's a very, very broken down version of how our treatment plant operates. So you can see these are our newly installed NTEX units. These are the bug motels. They come in, they look like big square boxes. One little tidbit on this one, NTEX was rather surprised that we actually had cattails growing up through the middle of these over the summertime. This is something the president of their company actually came out to our treatment plant because he had never seen this in the history of their installation, so he had to see it in person. Go figure, it would be our treatment plant that it would happen in. But that was a project that was just completed. So right now we are currently meeting permit. We were before, but we're now meeting the new permit limits. We haven't had any issues in the 8 or 9 months that we've been operating. Some of the other things, though, that have happened that need to be worked on in our treatment plant, we'll call it, since our treatment plant was built in 1979, originally. Some folks who are still around, it experienced the Clean Water Act, the big boom of the Clean Water Act in the wastewater industry. There was a lot of public funding for building treatment plants, building pump stations, building this infrastructure that now has achieved, right, 79, we're going on to the 50th, 60th year for some of this infrastructure that was in the early 70s. It's starting to show its age a little bit. We're not alone in the infrastructure issue that we have, and some of the issues that we have. So our RBCs, I was talking about this earlier. This is the first, what we'll call the first phase bugs. This is just plastic media that rotates constantly. The bugs live on the media. The bugs consume whatever they can in the wastewater, and then they keep on rotating. So you can imagine that I equate an RBC breakdown or a potential RBC failure to picking up rocks in the river. If you're running something over water consistently 24/7 for 20 years, it's going to break down. So even though that's high density HDPE, high density polyethylene plastic, at some point it wears down enough that it becomes brittle and starts to slough off. One of the things that makes this project, or makes this potential project, a little more challenging is that these are fully enclosed in a roof. So when we have to maintain one of these things, or we have to take this out, we actually have to remove roof panels in order to do that. So you could imagine the cost of construction is quite high when you have to do a lot of ancillary things in order to maintain certain pieces of equipment. We have been fortunate, very fortunate, that we haven't had a catastrophic failure of our RBCs. We've been able to do the bearings, the trunnions, things like that without needing to do a full removal But if the shaft were to actually break, that would be a different story. The top picture is actually our secondary clarifier. So I talked about we take the big stuff out, biology does its thing, we settle out some other stuff. This is we settle out some other stuff. So in the secondaries, wastewater still looks a little murky. Solid material, some really fine sand, we'll call it. Looks like grit. Settles to the bottom, we suck that off, we haul that away. Our skimmer across the top here, as you can see, is very, very well rusted over and could use a little bit of a facelift. It's not uncommon for skimmers to go like that. They constantly see a water flow over the top 24/7, and over time they just need to be repaired or replaced. So those are just some of the highlights of our wastewater treatment plant. So we had done a pump station evaluation of our 6 pump stations back when we finished back in 2024, which recommended that we replace the majority of them in part. As you can see from the photos, they've hit the end of their usefulness. A lot of them were put in 1979, the same year as the wastewater treatment plant. They've been maintained to the best of our ability, but after 50 years, concrete starts to be concrete, 50-year-old concrete. The structure itself may be showing some signs of deterioration. Certainly, as you can see, the control panels and electrical equipment, electrical control boxes could use a repair or replacement as well. These are not small in terms of capital dollars. We will get to the capital dollars on the next one of the other slides, but our estimate from our consultant was right around between $6 and $8 million to do all 6 pump stations at once. So you can imagine, as we begin to look at the phasing of these things, that we're trying to stretch out, look at which ones have a low likelihood of failure, and maybe not do those this year, but in subsequent years down the line, so that it doesn't have such a drastic impact on our operations. And the last thing that we did, the last thing we really made progress on in the sanitary sewer side was the inflow and infiltration study that was completed this past fall. So for most of you that don't know, for anybody who doesn't know, inflow and infiltration is water that's cleaned, i.e. rainwater, that makes contact with wastewater and instantly becomes dirty. There's no taking it back. So this is rainwater that may be from a cracked pipe, manhole cover, leaking manhole cover, water that shouldn't be in our sanitary sewer, that should be in our storm sewer. But basically, what this shows is some of the ways that infiltration and inflow get into your house. So there's the way that I think of infiltration and inflow, they're 2 separate things. Infiltration is like the IV at the hospital. They put it in you, it's instant. You instantly see the result. Inflow is the time-released Tylenol that takes 8 hours to get there. It still gets there, but it takes a long time to get there. So when we think of the collection system and pipes, when we see infiltration, it's roof leaders directly connected from a home, which was popular back in the 70s, sump pumps, floor drains in your basements, those things that are all directly connected to the sanitary sewer that collect rainwater, foundation drains. It goes to the wastewater treatment plant and gets treated. What precipitated the inflow and infiltration flow study was Tom and I were looking at the data for the wastewater treatment plant, and in a 1-inch rainstorm, we were seeing flows at our treatment plant of upwards of 9 gallons of clean water for every 1 gallon that we would expect to need to treat. So you could imagine the cost of chemical and anything else that we use at that treatment plant just went up 9 times. So that's why we commissioned this inflow and infiltration flow study, which looked at our collection system, the pipe. It was acoustic sounding, pipe soundness, manhole inspections of all the manholes, as well as flow meter data. So when we talk about inflow and infiltration, there's actually 2 ends of it. There's the private side, which is everybody's home on your side of the property line, and the public side, which is ours. We can control on our side what we can control on our side. It really is incumbent on property owners to help us manage the utility by disconnecting sump pumps, disconnecting roof leaders, and discharging that rainwater over ground to the best that we can. Some of our home laterals and root intrusion, those are issues that are just going to be around forever. We'll always be chasing that. But we can look at our collection system, and we can line pipes, we can fix manhole covers, we can do everything that we can do. And if we get no assistance from homeowners, that percentage of the I&I is always going to exist. So it really is a two-headed thing. Getting the sump pumps disconnected is really important. Getting the roof leaders disconnected is really important. Those are 2 very easy ones that every homeowner can do. And then we take care of the sanitary sewer itself. So like I said before, part of the I&I flow study was monitoring flow at 24 sites. There are actually values that are associated with flow and what you could expect is an acceptable amount of I&I for a certain linear foot of pipe. Looking at manhole inspections, here are a couple of photos of our manholes. You can see this one was located in Genesee Street. That's an old brick manhole where the bottom is caved out of it a little bit. This one is actually from Heritage Woods, which is certainly a more recent installation, and you can tell because it's a precast concrete manhole. The point being here that I&I isn't necessarily an age thing. It's not necessarily that manhole needed to be replaced 30 years ago issue. Construction methods are an important thing to look at. Right? Heritage Woods is a relatively newer development. Certainly this manhole is a relatively newer manhole, but it leaks right around the joint where they put 2 4-foot sections of manhole together. So when groundwater comes up, enters the manhole, and then goes into our sanitary sewer, and then eventually gets treated at our treatment plant. So these are the things that we look to identify so that we can plan how to progress the removal of I&I in our collection system. One of the things with collection system work is it's not a one and done type of project. Like the pump stations, we do the pump station, it's new, its expected life is 20 years, it's going to stay new for a long time. Collection system work is typically done on a percentage basis. We do 10% of the system a year, 10% a year, 10% a year, and consistent effort over 20 or 10 years, you get through the whole system, and then you begin the process back again because your year 1 improvements are now 10 years, so it's just time for maintenance things. It's kind of tough to see from the back, but this is a picture showing the results of our manhole inspections on the top. There are actually 4 colors there, red being the most severe, orange being slightly less severe, yellow and green. General rule of thumb on our I&I data at both the manhole inspections and the acoustic pipe inspections are that 60% of our collection system is in good shape. Maybe not brand new shape, but good shape. It's not visibly showing signs of deterioration. 40% of our collection system is in need of some form of rehabilitation, whether it be a manhole liner, a sewer liner, or a full replacement. So to my point earlier about Heritage Woods, this is the 6 manholes up in Heritage Woods. You can see 4 of them are very dark red. That was the one from the picture from the previous slide that had the concrete manhole that was leaking. Predominantly, most of our work identified in the collection system is along Genesee Street, right down the main drag. As you can imagine, that construction on Genesee Street is very difficult to do, so I could understand why those areas would have been left alone for a little while. And then up Fennel in front of Village Hall, appears to be a couple of manholes up in there that have seen better days. For the most part, the pipe acoustic testing followed that same line. Like I said, you had a couple of outliers like the Heritage Woods manholes, but generally if the manholes were in rough shape, the pipe was also in rough shape. The dark blue, kind of tough to see the dark blue. Dark blue were sections of the sewer that we actually couldn't get to for a couple of reasons. In particular, this one right here on the north end of the lake, that manhole is actually somebody built a porch directly over the top of it. So we couldn't acoustically sound the other 2 ends of the pipe because we couldn't get to that sewer. So we'll have to, the next step of this is to do some closed circuit television inspection of the sending camera down there to actually be able to inspect that pipe. So here's some of the data on the inflow and infiltration flow study. A couple of things that I'd like to know when we talk about inflow and infiltration. Like I said, the infiltration is almost a direct hit. Infiltration you see almost immediately on a data curve. It comes, it hits your roof or whatever the source is, it goes into the system and you see it almost instantly. Inflow is slightly delayed. So this is, it hits ground, it hits somebody's front yard, it has to make its way through the soil to get to the crack in the pipe. So you generally see a delay in the data between infiltration and inflow. But as you can see, right now, at this location, we were hovering right down around 50 gallons a minute for this storm. This storm right here hit, which is a 1.25-inch rainstorm, and we almost immediately saw that 50 turn into 1,000. Storm subsides, storm moves through. You almost immediately see the drop back down, not quite to the 50 GPM, because that's where inflow kicks in and you start to see some seepage from inflow. The key being here is that every gallon of water that's in our sewer system is a gallon of water that can't make it to our sewer system from your residence. So if we have issues with capacity in the system because we have a 10x flow during a small storm event, eventually it's going to make its way back through the system. One other thing to note that I really do want to make sure that we get here is this period right here of inflow is December 15th through December, looks like 27th. That means in that one inch rainstorm, it took our system over a week and a half to get back to close to a normally functioning flow rate. That just means there's a consistent amount of inflow coming in. So our next steps in this project in particular in the I&I world is going to be smoke and dye testing of some targeted areas. So we got our data on our pipes and our manholes and our flow data. We're going to look at some targeted streets to do smoke and dye testing to identify whether it's infiltration or inflow and be able to develop a capital plan off of that. So we talked about treatment plant, pump stations, collection system, and all three of these things are right now in what I would consider the data gathering / evaluation phase. We don't have a capital dollar to them except for the pump stations. Pump stations we do have a capital dollar to. but certainly the wastewater treatment plant and the collection system, we're still developing the capital plan and the capital program to be able to implement that and execute that in construction. These are the things that we're doing, call it, not in the background, but it's not as visible to the general public because there's not shovels in the ground. There aren't construction workers riding around. People saw the Duke's truck, but they were kind of wondering what the root control guy was doing on the block when we were out there. So our pumps, as I talked about before, our pump station rehabilitation, we finished the report phase. We'd be looking to enter the design and construction phase, looking at a roughly $6 to $8 million mark on that. The inflow and infiltration flow study, as we digest the target areas and we start to pull out these target areas, we'll be developing the cost to do the CCTV and smoke testing, as well as the capital costs for the phase after that, which would be to repair or replace the sewer. One thing that we do look at is we overlay road, sewer, and water to find out which streets would benefit from a complete replacement of all the utilities in the street. So dig once, not 2 or 3 separate times. Those will all play into some of the decisions that we make moving forward. And the last would be for us to complete and execute and complete the wastewater treatment plant facility evaluation. This is going to be similar to the pump station evaluation. This is looking at age of equipment, condition of equipment, functionality, current design standards, and potential future needs. We all hear a lot of things in the news and from friends about PFAS and forever chemicals and how that's going to impact wastewater treatment. And those are kind of still to be determined. Those are things that would be looked at as part of the report for how we can position the village moving forward. Again, provide consistent and reliable sanitary sewer service. So just a summary of our customers, about 1,200 customers. We run on a $1.1 million budget. We have Seth, right now Seth and Matt, plus our contract operators, that being the Camden Group. And then sewer is billed based on water usage at $0.122 per cubic foot. Use less water, reduce your sewer bill as well. And again, back to looking at a long-term capital plan. Most importantly, because pump stations are a short-term, what I call short, like I said, short-term project. It's here, we build them, they work, and then they have a 20-year useful life. Collection system being consistent, dedicated effort to the collection system at some percentage or a dollar value per year, something that we can budget for that's consistent. And then the wastewater treatment plant work, that being a much more significant dollar amount, it's going to take some longer capital planning. So in our eyes, we're looking, I consider this horizon to be a 10 to 15 year mark at the treatment plant, and a 10 to 15 year mark with the collection system, and a 0 to 5 to 7 year mark with the pump stations. Just to give you a perspective on where we think as a department we're trying to get to. So like I said before, we are not alone. This was, I actually had in my previous employment, had the pleasure of inspecting and doing the water main rehab under the Central Park Reservoir. That was built in 1805. Those are 48-inch water mains running. It was literally 300 feet under the ground under Central Park here. We replaced the water mains between there and underneath the Metropolitan Water House, so their Opera House. So as daunting as some of this seems to be some days, it could always be significantly worse. Entry into that was a challenge, but like I said before, the Clean Water Act did a lot of great things in the 70s, but it's been 60 years, it's been 50 years, and we have to be prepared to continue to provide consistent, reliable sanitary sewer and water service to you folks in the village. So with that, I am done. Does anybody have any questions? If you do, you can direct them to some of our friends who have made their way into our sanitary sewer. This is Skaneateles snake, and that was a buck that was caught at our wastewater treatment plant in the back. There's actually another one standing right back there. They were just enjoying the scenery. So,
In Cosmo,
yes.
does the village have the capabilities of doing the testing in-house, or is that all subcontracted out? The dye testing, smoke testing, and camera work? Do you guys have the capabilities of doing that in-house?
It's kind of a twofold. We don't have the equipment to do that in-house, but it's also manpower intensive. So going back to Seth and Matt are running the wastewater treatment plant and...
Well, Seth is always at the bakery, I mean, come on.
All right, we're gonna have to have a separate discussion about that. No, generally the smoke and dye testing is something that you do as part, it's a one-off as part of a study. So the next step would be sewer cleaning, the general routine maintenance, the sewer cleaning, the manhole inspections. Those are things that we could potentially take on in the future as a village. But from an operations perspective, to actually go out and smoke test ourselves, it's far more efficient and cost effective if we hire a consultant to do that.
Thank you.
It's tough to justify like $250,000 investment in a TV camera and then walk by it every day in the garage.
Yeah, Lee?
Yeah, a couple. So we didn't talk about storm sewer, and I guess because we don't charge that as a utility, but how does that get funded and maintained, and is that?
So storm sewer is not part of our sanitary system, obviously.
No, that I understand.
It's part of our road system, so it's carried in the budget in our DPW.
Okay, so
It's got a separate line item for some of that in the general fund, but it's also done as part of our highways.
Do we know the material condition of that as well, or is that somebody else?
That we haven't gotten into studying yet. We're focusing primarily on the road infrastructure, and we make note of these things as new connections are made. So, for example, like down Orchard, most of it's HDPE because I've seen 3 different instances where contractors had it dug up and we needed to inspect it. So we had done this with the sanitary sewer as well. When I first got here, it was, okay, what's our physical documentation? What records do we have and what physically have we documented? So we're in that same boat right now with the storm sewer. A bit of a less of a concern on the storm sewer side because it does discharge directly to Skaneateles Creek. And if it's cross-connected, it's cross-connected on the storm going to sanitary, not the other way around, because we would probably know that one really quickly.
So, and I'm Bill on the board, so I'm probably asking dumb questions here. So, how's the interface between our water system and the city of Syracuse?
We only share the intake.
Okay.
As soon as the water comes out of the pipe, or should I say, basically, when it crosses Genesee Street, it immediately splits.
Okay.
So our involvement with the city of Syracuse is from basically Genesee Street out to the intake site.
And last one for me anyways. So is there any long-term thought about, or concerns you mentioned, since it's no filtration, but of course we have this issue. Is there any concerns or cost estimates of or any implications of that in our cost and treatment process?
Right now it is something that's in the back of our minds, but our operation is significantly different than the city's. So even in those turbid events, Jim does a phenomenal job with keeping our system in line. But the benefit that we have is that we pump up to the tank, so we have time. What we get is time. we treat and then we pump to the tank. So we have time for any of that stuff to be either killed or taken out. The city of Syracuse draws out and sends it, and they don't get any treatment. So they're getting hits down the pipe before it gets treated. We're getting hits at the intake, but then we're immediately treating, pumping to the tank, and that's why we've been able to keep our filtration avoidance, because of the way the gym operates the system.
We would work really, really hard to keep that filtration, because it's probably $2 to $3 million in equipment alone, for filtration equipment. Because you have to have redundancy. So you're putting in 2 giant million-plus gallon filters. And if you've ever been back there, there's not a whole lot of space.
Any other questions?
Hey Jim, what did we miss?
Nothing. That was a good presentation.
Okay?
Yeah, very good. Very informational, informative. Sorry.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for coming out. Appreciate everybody making the time for this. We will see you possibly at the next one in 2 weeks, right?
Yep.
2 weeks.
March 10th.
2 weeks for
March
DPW,
10th.
police,
Informative.
fire, and everything
Informative.
else.
Informative.
All right, thank you everybody.
Thank you.